are back. Welcome back into the Pigskin Cafe. My name is Hampton Sipper, and I will be your host this evening, guiding you through our college football Week 11 recap and our discussion of the Alabama versus LSU debacle, in my eyes. But joining me tonight are my two good friends, the correspondent at large himself, Graham Haney, and the Reddit extraordinaire, Chase Haney, who's returning after a 2 week absence. Fellas, are we ready to dive into another great week of college football it was?
Yeah, we're ready. I appreciate you guiding us though, Hampton, because after the way Alabama played, I mean, there's going to be lots of wailing and lots of gnashing of teeth as
Yes.
we enter the funeral home for the Alabama Crimson Tide's 2022 national championship hopes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Chase, what about you, man?
Hey man, things are good this way. Excited for tonight. Excited to be back. Hey, if y'all didn't see, college basketball has started again, which is
Absolutely.
exciting. I'm not wanting to wish away college football by any means, but it is fun to see kind of some college basketball getting full swing. And I think that signing day was today.
It
And you know your
was.
Baylor Bears got another 5-star
Come on.
and excited about it. So excited to talk about tonight, man. I think there's some things that we need to talk about, not just cover. We need to talk about tonight. So
Absolutely.
Nathan, steer us, coordinate us, is so many of us in the world so desperately need. Coordinate us through what tonight would be a success, a win.
Well, hopefully I'll coordinate you better than Bill O'Brien and Pete Golding did on Saturday, but we'll get to that in just a minute. Graham, I also want to give you a shout out. Your hot seat video that you did a couple weeks back, your 2 of 5 brother, and I think you might be 5-5 or 5 for 5 by the time it's all said and done. So awesome work on that. If you haven't checked that out, be sure to do so and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, hit that notification bell for any time our video goes live. You will be notified, and we can't wait to interact with you there. Now, before we kind of dive into Alabama LSU, Chase, I want to start with you, man. Another great weekend of college football. I mean, it keeps delivering like it does each and every year. And you contrast that to the NFL that I think has been kind of lackluster, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
College football has been very, very fun, very engaging. What was your biggest takeaway from Week 11?
Yeah, before we get started, I want to
Why are we smiling? Why are we smiling?
I do want to give a shout out to our sponsors who are the Marina in Braselton, Georgia. Just want to give a big shout out to all they do for the show.
To who?
The Marina in Braselton, Georgia. Shout out to you for that connection.
Okay.
And, sorry, I was just sitting here thinking about you shouting out Graham, and I had to shout out our non-existent sponsor. Now,
Nice.
two takeaways this weekend. I think first of all is that man, Georgia, we knew they were a good football team, and they yet again have taken what should be a competitive, who's gonna fight and claw to win it at the end. Who it might be one of those things where whoever's got the ball at the end of the game is going to win. And Georgia just takes that narrative and just takes it off the table and takes care of business, shows that they're the better team. That it seems like it's not really close, but by the same token, Georgia just showed us a lot. They're the real deal. They're not pretending at all. And that would just take me on to my second point, which is Kansas is proving that they didn't just catch lightning in a bottle. They are actually a good football team.
Mm-hmm.
But Oklahoma State has become a little bit of a phony. I know their quarterback's hurt, but just not having the replacements to that was kind of a test for them. So Oklahoma State just kind of shakes up who's going to win the Big 12. Obviously, probably TCU, but who comes in second? It puts Baylor back in the mix, which is just a really interesting conversation. You have Texas there, so the Big 12 still seems to be pretty open, especially for who's going to play in that championship game. Graham, as you watched this weekend, what did you take away?
Yeah, I'm staying in Texas for my takeaway, and it was a flu game for Texas A&M, yet their offense still has been sick. I mean, it has been awful all year. They got outscored by Florida 41-24, and what we've seen out of Florida this whole season is that they are somewhat predictable, but it all depends on how much you let Anthony Richardson use his legs. If you let him use his legs a lot, it could be a game like Utah where Florida wins. If it turns into a game where Florida plays Georgia, they limit his legs, they make him throw the football, and what happens? They lose. Texas A&M, their defense, let him run all over them. Their offense for A&M, I know they were missing Weidman, their quarterback, but Haynes King filled in, and guess what? They still scored their typical 24 points. So things are definitely going to get some shake up this offseason in Texas A&M. If there was going to be a coordinator hot seat, I could promise you that some A&M coordinators would be on it for sure. Jimbo, not the best play caller anymore. So these A&M fans are getting kind of uneasy, and you could expect that. They have such a high expectation of their football program, especially one season after beating Alabama and bring in the number one recruiting class. They expected to compete for a national championship, and they are on the back end of a 5-game losing streak.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean they're playing Auburn this weekend, so maybe they
sold out crowd.
Yeah, maybe that writes the course. But if not, it comes down to Massachusetts the week after that. So A&M has to win out in order to make a bowl game, and I don't think that any of us would have predicted that that's how the season would have gone for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they still have to play LSU too, and honestly, with the fight that Auburn showed under Cadillac on Saturday in Starkville, I pick Auburn to win that game.
Playing at home.
I think they're playing at home, and while I'm not an Auburn fan, as a sport fan, if you don't think that Cadillac being the interim coach at Auburn and the experience of that is not just really cool, like put aside your fandom. I mean, how much that job means to him, how much he loves Auburn, how much he loves those kids. I thought that was a really cool dynamic that played out on Saturday night, and that's something you can only get in college football. I thought that was just really cool. But I agree with many of your takeaways, guys. Big 12 has been very interesting this year. A lot to shake out, including this weekend with TCU and Texas playing. That is a massive game, and we will talk about it in the next episode and preview it a little bit. But my big takeaway from the weekend, and Graham, I believe you and I called it last week. We said that Notre Dame was going to beat Clemson. Did you say, or did you pick Clemson? You picked Clemson.
I picked Clemson. We did predict. I predicted that would be a close game. I didn't think that it'd be a
blowout.
I didn't think that Notre Dame would do what they did to Clemson.
Yeah, and I think Notre Dame did an incredible job of punching Clemson in the mouth and keeping their foot on their throat. I mean, It was 28-0 at one point. I believe the final ended up being 35-14. And going into the game, I felt very good about how they matched up with Clemson because I've not been very impressed with what I've seen from them. I think a lot of the DJ Uyunglele hype or resurgence was kind of inflated based on the teams that they had played. I mean, you saw that Syracuse game and kind of what they did to him. If you pressure him a little bit, it's all she wrote. I mean, he's just not very effective in that aspect when he gets pressured. He relies on a lot of 50-50 balls. I don't think he processes very quickly. And when you take away Will Shipley in that run game, they're going to struggle. And then on their defense, I think their front seven's really good, but their back end is not. And Notre Dame, another signature win for Marcus Freeman, who has had a rough stretch, with that Marshall game and then that Stanford game. But take away those two, and you can't because in the totality of the season, those two games matter, but they played Ohio State tough. And then Clemson's another big ranked opponent, and you spanked them. And I've been very impressed with kind of how they've rebounded and how they've improved over the year. I mean, they lost their starting quarterback. Now they're riding Drew Pine. So I've been very impressed with kind of that was a shout out to Kyle, ride the pine. He loved old Drew Pine last year, but very impressed with kind of how they bounced back and how he's building that program. I mean, that was one thing that Brian Kelly struggled with at Notre Dame was winning the signature big time games. And now Marcus Freeman has his first signature win at Clemson and or not at Clemson, beating Clemson at Notre Dame. So I think that move of Marcus Freeman being elevated to Notre Dame and Brian Kelly going to LSU was a rare win-win for both coach and program. Because I think both the programs are better off for having the coach switch, and I think the individual coach is better off. I think Brian Kelly had done all he could do there. And I think Marcus Freeman is now recruiting a little better than Kelly did at Notre Dame, and he's shown his ability to improve his football team and develop them over the course of the year. So very impressed with what they did. And we'll segue with that, talking about Brian Kelly. And I got to give it up for him. What an incredible job he's done in year one at LSU with a roster that is very talented, but he had to do a lot of patchwork to get it to the level that it is right now. Bringing in Jaden Daniels from Arizona State. Their secondary is a lot of transfers, and they've got an infusion of young talent like Harold Perkins, who was an absolute demon on Saturday. I think he has done an incredible job there in his first year, and they're only going to get better because I think he's one of the best coaches in college football, at least top 10. And he had his first big signature win on Saturday night in Baton Rouge. They beat Alabama 32-31. And this is where we're going to kind of camp out for the rest of the episode. And I kind of want to do that segue and give props to him before we kind of did a full deep dive on Alabama. And I'm going to kind of lead this off, and then I want to hear y'all's thoughts. And this pains me to say, fellas. It pains me to say.
It hurts to listen.
Yeah, I know it does. Alabama is no longer the standard in college football. They are no longer the standard right now. And that hurts. It brings a tear to my eye. I'm not even joking, because Alabama has been the standard for the better part of 14 to 15 years. But after that loss against LSU, they are no longer the standard. And you could argue that maybe this whole season has shown you that they're not the standard. Mm-hmm. And I think it's been very disappointing because, they played Tennessee. They didn't play a very good game, and they only lost by 3. And so as an Alabama fan, you're thinking, okay, they're going to go into the bye, they're going to get some things fixed, and they're going to come out, make a statement against LSU, because that is what Bama teams of the past have done. They have a bad game, and then they come back and they respond. And early on in the game, I thought the defense played very well. I thought they limited LSU. And the offense, their first drive was very promising, but then they get down to the 3-yard line. Bryce Young throws a pick. And when that happened, I knew that did not bode well for Alabama's chances in that game, because it kind of seemed like if Alabama took control there, they probably would win the game kind of comfortably, because I think it kind of changed the tenor of the game when he threw that pick. And ultimately, it came back to bite them. I mean, if you have that touchdown in your back pocket, I think the game plays out totally differently. But I want to talk about the offense. We're going to talk about the defense too. But with the defense, a lot of it, I think, is stuff that many of us have said before about Pete Golding and certain players not stepping up. But I want to talk about the offense, because there's been a lot of talk over the past few days. And if I've seen it once, I've seen it 1,000 times, that Alabama and Nick Saban wasted the greatest player to ever come through, or the greatest quarterback to ever come through, in Bryce Young, by not winning a championship with him. And I know this is not popular, and I know that tweet got a lot of those tweets and those message board posts got a lot of traction. I totally disagree with that assertion. Number one is because Bryce Young last year, he won the Heisman Trophy, and he got to the national championship game. And while Georgia deserves full credit for winning that game, they were the better team that night. You, and I know that if Jameson Williams or John Mechie were healthy, Alabama wins that game. We saw what happened when they were fully healthy in the SEC championship game, and it wasn't particularly close. And so That is just kind of bad luck. That is football. Injuries happen. You deal with it. But this year, Bryce Young, even before his injury, I would say has not played to the level that he played last year. I think we can all kind of agree with that. And I want to hit him last because I want to get all of the, not excuses, but the context of the situation that a lot of people bring up when they talk about why the offense or why Bryce Young has struggled this year. One is everyone loves to blame Bill O'Brien, the offensive coordinator. Anybody who watches this show knows that I don't think Bill O'Brien is like a Lane Kiffin, a Steve Sarkisian, or anything like that. But I do think he's a bright football mind. I mean, he coached the Patriots. He did good at Penn State. He coached Deshaun Watson and those Texans teams. He was a good coach. Now, he's not a good general manager, but he was a good coach. I don't think there's really any arguing that. But everyone loves to blame anytime the offense goes bad on him, and I don't think that's always the case. Now, what I will say is it is a disgrace that you have the second or third best yards per carry per run in college football, but you're 88th in attempts. That's on you, brother. That is on you not committing to the run and trying to establish it with Jahmyr Gibbs, who's arguably a top 5 back in the country. That I will put at the feet of Bill O'Brien. That is his fault, and that is a schematic and a personnel failure. Speaking of scheme, another thing that I don't think he does well, I don't think he's the most creative as far as play design or as far as manufacturing separation for your receivers. I'm not going to disagree with any of that. Lane Kiffin, Steve Sarkisian knew how to scheme guys open, how to create and manufacture space with wide splits by mesh concepts, rub routes, all that stuff. Bill O'Brien is not great at that. I will fully admit that. That I put on his feet. Another common complaint, the receivers. The receivers aren't as good as Alabama's had in the past. I'm not going to disagree. Isaiah Bond, Kobe Prentice, Ja'Cory Brooks, Jermaine Burton, they're not Smitty, Judy, Waddle, and Ruggs. They are not. But they're not even J-Mo and Mechie from last year. They're not that group. But they are not as bad as Alabama fans want to say they are as far as getting separation and getting open. Now, they're not open every play. Like our good friend Jimmy Stein likes to say, I don't know where Devontae is, but Devontae Smith's always open. You know, that they are not that. But they generate enough separation throughout the game that I don't think I think they are part of the problem that they don't generate it consistently enough. But the fact that people say, oh, they don't get open at all, I totally disagree with that. Now I laid those 2 points out, and I want to get to Bryce Young because people don't want to, I don't know why, but they don't want to say after this LSU game that he did not heavily contribute to the loss. Bryce Young did not play a good football game on Saturday, guys. He did not. And I get that his shoulder might be still hurt. And I understand that he did not practice much leading up to this game. But there were guys open consistently throughout the night, over the middle. Cam Latu many a time. Kobe Prentice a couple times. Even on the final drive where the Alabama got the field goal to put it into overtime, he missed Cam Latu. He made a bad throw to Ja'Cory Brooks that could have gotten more yards. He made a bad throw to JoJo Earl on an out route. If he hits JoJo Earl in stride, JoJo can catch the ball and go up the field and get out of bounds. And you save time, and then you don't know what ends up happening at the end of the game. So he was off from an accuracy standpoint. He was off from a decision-making standpoint. Many times he just didn't throw the ball. And I think part of that is his height. I know he's listed at 5'11", 5'10", but I don't know if he's even that tall, to be honest with you. And when LSU, what they did, they flooded the gaps, flooded the interior, put pressure in his face, and he did not handle it well. And it's the same game plan that LSU employed last year against him that worked. That's the thing. People want to say, oh, Bryce has never struggled. Bryce struggled in games last year. He struggled in the LSU game. He struggled in the Auburn game. The Auburn game, I give him a little bit of a pass because Chris Owens was like, ole, 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 letting the defender come around the edge all throughout that game. The Texas game, he did the same type thing where he had open receivers. He wouldn't pull the trigger. Mississippi State, he did not play a good game at all, other than a few plays here and there, especially in the second half when they kind of adjusted. And then LSU, they spied Harold Perkins. So anytime that Bryce, he would kind of bail the pocket too early, Harold Perkins is a different cat. He could catch up with him and make a sack or make Bryce rush a throw. And I think you saw that. And with all this criticism, I'm not taking away that Bryce is not a great player. He's an excellent player. He's one of the best quarterbacks Alabama's ever had. But his inability at times to go through reads quickly, to find the open guy, his over-reliance on off-script plays where he kind of plays backyard ball, it's beautiful when it works, but overall it can be a hindrance to the offense, and you cannot play football that way consistently and win. And you put all of this together in a ball, and that's why Alabama struggles on offense. It's play calling, it's receivers not consistently getting open, and it's Bryce not executing his job at times. Like I said, it's not all on him. It definitely isn't. But he played a bad game on Saturday, and it's fine to admit that he did. And I think, this last thing I'll say, and then I'll kick it to y'all to kind of get your thoughts on the offensive side of the ball. But even when he played in 2020 in a Sarkisian offense, the difference between how he got the ball out of his hands compared to like a Mac Jones was stark. And what I mean by that is Bryce is not – how often does he get at the top of his drop and the ball's out? He's not very much a timing-based quarterback. He's very instinctual, very much a feeling the game type quarterback. And while when it works, it's beautiful, within a structure of offense, you got to operate off timing, and you got to get the ball out quick at times. And I don't think he does that well sometimes. He's always trying to look for a big play, and he holds on to the ball too long. He doesn't hit his checkdowns at times, and that limits the offense. And then you pair that with not hitting the throws that he should make, you get what you got for the better part of 3 quarters on Saturday. So I know that was a lot. I know some of that was unpopular, but Chase, I'll start with you, man. What do you make of that? Do you disagree with anything that I said? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, this game, I think, like you said, you started off by saying, hey, Alabama is no longer the standard of college football. And I think that you're right when you say that. There was a moment, though, during that game that I saw some hits that happened that reminded me of the old school Alabama, the old school LSU, just watching guys who were going to play in the NFL play each other in college. Mm-hmm. There was a little hint of that was like, man, these guys are hitting like as if they were in the NFL. Mm-hmm. There was something, though, that was strange about the offense that as I was sitting here and I was listening to you talk that I remembered that I saw, but I don't think we've even got a chance to talk about. Mm-hmm. And it was that I would say more towards the beginning of the game. Mm-hmm. How many times did Bryce throw the ball and it seemed like the wide receiver was supposed to go to the boundary and they cut upfield? Mm-hmm. There were several balls that seemed like the wide receiver and Bryce were not on the same page. Mm-hmm. And not just once, twice. I mean, we were talking about 4 or 5 times.
In the first 10 plays after that first drive, 100%.
And I don't know. I can only speculate whether that was, hey, we need to try to read the corner and try to make hey, if he's got your inside shoulder, go to the boundary. And maybe it's just I have to put and just zoom in on, and I know that that's what we're trying to do is that, yes, it's play calling. It's Bryce can own a little bit of this. I think if I had to zoom in on anything, I think I zoom in on Bill O'Brien and just say, man, you've got to be more creative. But when I'm looking at these wide receivers that Bryce is working with, that's where I think that most of us have just frustration that we haven't had in the past, because I think it's just been such a stark contrast between what we used to have when we had the Bama standard to the guys that we have running routes right now. And nothing against Latu, but Latu's not even a tight end who's become one of our better receiving threats. And he didn't even get recruited to come to Alabama and do that. But again, there was a lot of times that it seemed like Bryce and our receivers were not on the same page, which is frustrating. But maybe that's a little bit of, okay, maybe we were trying to get creative, and these guys just simply, we tried to implement it over the bye week. We thought we had it in practice. We realized, post first quarter that we're not able to do what we wanted to do. And I'm not sure. I noticed that beginning, didn't see what happened with that towards the game as they went on. But there has been a change in philosophy behind who we recruit when it comes to wide receivers. I think that Tyreek Hill changed this model of that you can have a small receiver and that speed is going to always kill matchups. That's what you kept hearing over this offseason. Like, man, this is a revenge tour. We're getting guys who are smaller, that are faster, that are going to have more speed. And my thing is, it seems to have not led to more separation. That's where my gripe is that I don't think that it's led to more separation. I think that we're asking Bryce to simply make NFL throws all the time. As I'm watching this game, that's what I think that you're saying. Hey, Bryce has to be that he has to be more consistent. Yeah, sure. But how is one guy going left and the other guy's going right? It seems like these guys don't have the separation. They don't seem to have the playbook down. I'm still waiting for somebody to step up. Nobody. Brooks stepped up, had 17 targets
and 7 catches.
There's something majorly off if you're not even catching half of the targets that you're having, thrown your way.
But I think
go for it.
Yeah, but I think part of that, of course, it's 17 targets, but it's not like he dropped 10 balls. Some of them are just they were inaccurate throws. And you talked about miscommunication. There was one on the second or third drive of the game. Bond runs a slant, and Bryce throws it, and if Bond turns around and catches that ball, he's in the hospital. It was a terrible throw. It was a terrible decision. There was one time on a third down, Bryce left the pocket too early, which was a theme all night, that he would leave the pocket too early when he didn't have to. Bond is streaking down for a touchdown, right up the seam. Right up the seam. He's wide open for a touchdown. And that's my thing. There can be a better, Bill O'Brien could do a better job of scheming up easy yards, where everything's not so difficult. But also when plays are there, you got to make them. And he just flat out didn't execute. He played a D- game. And it would have been an F if not for the Houdini play in the fourth quarter. But if he plays like a C+, Alabama wins. And it probably wins comfortably. So I get the whole thing about we're asking him to do too much. But I think the way he plays, he almost does that to himself instead of just taking what the defense gives him by hitting the easy throw or hitting the check down. It would make his job easier.
And I hear you. I think that it comes down. There seems to be lack of trust. How many times have I seen?
I agree with that.
How many times have I seen Jermaine Burton coming across the middle, or Holden coming across the middle, and he hits him dead between the numbers, both hands on the football, and they drop the football.
Mainly with Holden. And he ain't on the field anymore.
Yeah, there is some hesitancy when it comes to just not trusting these guys who he's throwing to. And I'm with you. Hey, there's times when it seems like, again, I can't see the whole play. I haven't been to a game to even see my own eyes to see what's happening outside of the view of field from the TV perspective. But there just seems to be some hesitancy. He seems to really trust Gibbs, and then past that, it feels like we're asking him to do all the work, and no one wants to help him out. And the last thing that I'll say is this, is that we have just not – this is a very general theme that this, like you said – that we don't lose the Bama standard in one game. No. You can lose to Tennessee and still accomplish all your goals. You can have that bye week. This is the direction we're going to head down if we don't get things right. What's scary is that the past 2 years we haven't played on the road well at all. Really, really poor. I sent you guys even a post that said something like this on Reddit. It said Alabama was 6 points away from being 9-0, and they were 7 points away from being 5-4.
Yep.
Now Georgia's not playing any of these teams as close as we just seem to give people life and not just beat a team because we're simply better than them. And that's where it's like, that's why we're saying the Bama standard has seemed to decrease, and we're a little bit more towards the middle of the pack with a lot of good players. But here's my last point, is that I just don't feel like we're getting the players. We're just not developing them. And it used to be this argument of people would come here and coach, and they would be there for a year and a half, 2 years, and then they would go somewhere else. And you really can't blame anybody for that. They're making progress in their own coaching career. You look at that 2015 coaching staff and where they've landed now, it makes total sense. That's what it looks like to be at the Bama standard, having great coaches, great players, creme de la creme. Everybody's getting developed. Everybody's getting better. I think Waddle is the last wide receiver that we have taken, who we recruited, brought in, and then said he is a product of Alabama. I think Mechie somewhat fits in here, but I don't even want to really claim that Mechie's anywhere in the realm of Waddle, Judy, Amari Cooper, all these. If you want to go Mechie there, I won't argue with you. But Slade Bolton, like, he was starting for our team last year. That would have been unacceptable any years previous to that. We have Bryce working with Slade Bolton. Again, no separation. All right, dude, you might even go to the league, because we're turning the page here. So bring in all this speed and all this talent, and where's the separation? I know Jameson Williams, I'm not going to consider him fully a Bama guy, because I feel like he was a part of a very strong receiving core at Ohio State. And I'm not saying that he lost his spot, but he might have been number 2 or number 3 there, and he came and just was our guy. When was the guy that we took in high school and then developed? But Waddle, it didn't take him to be a junior or a senior to start showing out. These guys, I think that we've just not even we hadn't set Bryce up well by developing the talent that's here. I think this is the one good thing that I'm taking, is that Kentucky seems to be falling apart without their offensive line coach that we now have. Waldron, how do you say his last name?
Wolford.
Wolford seems to have really come in and has that Bama standard of, I like to take guys who love to be in the trenches and love to fight. That's who I want. And I think I can't get into all the characteristics and character and personalities and NIL, all that. If you're a football coach, you're paid to get past that and then coach them on the field. But that's where a lot of my frustration lies. I feel like where is our number 1 receiver? We want it to be Brooks, and Brooks walks away with 7 catches, and we've thrown it to him 17 times. You again, Bryce can own several of those catches, several of those throws, but where's the creativity? Where's the development? Those are where my questions lie. And for that reason, that's why I'm not saying Bryce is the problem, because if you put DJ Uiagalelei on this team, it's even worse. We're way past two losses, is how I see it. So I'm not saying you're wrong when you point your finger at him and say, hey, he does have to man up. But I just simply I don't know where this team would be without him. I don't think that we have the tools available that someone else could come in here and start, and all of a sudden the things that Bryce struggles with, someone else is all of a sudden better at. Graham, you've heard us talk for about 20 minutes now. I'm sure the stuff you want to add as you just hear this. So take it whichever direction you feel like would be helpful, because I think that a lot of Alabama fans sit in this, they're just frustrated, but not really even sad it had to come to an end. They're not really mad. They're just kind of frustrated to see it go down like this. And not that the ship is sinking, but it's headed in the wrong direction. What do you kind of think about all this?
Yeah, I think that all of your points, Hampton, you and Chase, all of your points have been very valid. And I know I felt most, if not all of them, throughout these past years, definitely this season. I'm going to start off just talking about like this game, and then maybe get a little more broad. I think that it was very evident this game, and it's been evident this whole season, if not last year as well, in the fact that before Bill O'Brien was the coordinator, Mac Jones, Tua, Jalen, there was, shifting of routes for wide receivers, and the fact of, hey, we got this look. Let's audible out of this. Let's move to this. Hey, I'm going to give you this whatever signal. Judy, you're going to go across the middle. Whatever. I feel like this year, especially the Texas game has been, the Texas game, Tennessee game, the LSU game, the three closest games of the year, you could say. There's been zero time for Bryce Young to look out at Ja'Cory Brooks, at Latu, at all these other receivers and say, "Hey, I need you to shift and do this. We've got cover 3. We need to change. We got man. I want you to go deep." I feel like every single snap that Bryce Young has played this year is we're running against the clock. I mean, it's there's 3 seconds left on the game clock before we're snapping it every single time, and it's not like that is because we're trying to slow the game down, we're trying to get the most out of it, and then we're going to snap it late so that way we control the momentum. It is truly, we get out there, we line up, and then we spend 10, 15 seconds adjusting the offensive line to cover this blitz, that rusher, that there's no time to look out at any of our receivers, running backs, whatever, and audible on their routes. So I feel like that part of that is hurting Bryce Young in the fact that he's just having to run what's called. He's having to run what's called for the receivers, and then adjust the line of scrimmage to give him enough time to maybe make a play outside of that when they're not open. And to me, I think that puts so much pressure on Bryce Young. I mean, you look at the kid. I mean, you probably can't argue there's a person in college football more pressure on their back than Bryce Young to perform. He came off a Heisman Trophy season. He made it to the national championship, came up just short, and is trying to build his legacy that he wants to be the guy that I led Alabama to a national championship, and he's not going to be able to say that. And so I think that you got to give him a little bit of grace in that area, that there's nobody else in the country that's having to deal with what Bryce is having to deal with. Hampton, you can roll your eyes, but I don't see you out there under center. I'm not under center.
I'm not getting paid millions of dollars to be under center. Give me the Diet Dr. Pepper deal and see what I can do.
Hey, since we bring up the Diet Dr. Pepper deal, that's voodoo. DJ Uunglele last year, Bryce Young this year, bad voodoo. Don't ever take it.
May have a point.
And so that's
Probably
not me.
Waco, Texas.
That's not me excusing Bryce's performance, but that is me giving him a little bit of grace of this offense is 100% reliant on Bryce Young to make plays. Mm-hmm. You look at the games that the plays that Milrose in there, we have no offense at all. You look at when Bryce Young is out there, we hand the ball off like y'all said. Jahmyr Gibbs tearing up in yards, not getting any kind of workload, and so I feel like there's such a reliance on Bryce Young to make plays and to make the most out of them. Yeah, like every quarterback, you should make the most out of what you're given. But I feel like Bob is just calling plays and saying, "Oh well, F it, just let Bryce make a play out of it." And I don't feel like that is what like Sark did, what Loxley did. There was so much more expectancy of it. If it all comes to worst comes to worst, we get this play we can rely on, and we don't have that. We don't have that. This is the last thing I'll say about the game and just about the whole season, and then I'll get y'all's takes on it. Is our starting field position, especially in this last game, and for the most part all year, has been awful. You look at how we started, the game against LSU. We're getting the ball at the 10, the 5, the 15-yard line, and we're asking our offense to go 80, 75, 90 yards to score a touchdown. That's hard. That's very hard. It's
sustainable.
Yeah, it is very, it's almost impossible in the way that defenses and offenses have been run the past several years. They have worked a way to somewhat be a little bit more even. And whenever you're having to go 80 yards every single time, it's like 3rd and 20. You only have a few plays that can convert a 3rd and 20 without anything crazy happening. But when you're going 90 yards, you're going to run out of plays that the other team hasn't seen before. And so to me, that's been such a a devastating part of this offense is the defense's ability to stop people early in drives and to give us better field position. You look at the game. I mean, if you put LSU at the 10-yard line every single time that they start their drive, you put Tennessee at the 10-yard line every time they start their drive, those games are completely different. But I feel like in both of those games, in both of Alabama's losses, Alabama's offense is starting at the 10 and the opponent's offense is starting at the 40. A 30-yard difference is a difference. It is a huge difference. And so that's the rant for my time. So I'll take your comments now.
Well, I mean, let me just jump in. But I know you're going to say something. I just, on the vein of what he said, I mean, it's field position, it's special teams, Graham. And I mean, what you didn't even mention is, dude, how many times have we been sitting on the 15, the 10, the 5? And like you said, we run the ball for 2 yards. Okay. We don't stay committed to it, but we also don't set it up whatsoever. No creativity. Then we get a false start. Then I mean, we're constantly like we're third and 10 plus, and it's just you're right. I mean, it's field position, and it's almost like if you were to play Alabama straight up, kind of like how it seems like we want to play. Let Bryce be in control of the offense and audible to what he wants to audible to. It's like we'll let Bryce do that because he's going to be standing on his 10 and his 15. He's going to have to drive the whole entire field. And we just know if we just give him long enough, this team's so undisciplined, they'll shoot them own selves in the foot. And that's a great point that you made of just the field position battle. We've lost it all stinking year. I mean, and we've lost the turnover battle. We haven't. I mean, shoot, we
126 in the country in forced turnovers.
We haven't even been blessed with like a shanked punt. I mean, nothing, dude. No one.
Yeah.
Latu fumbles the ball. I mean, just the weird stuff in football has never happened this year for Alabama. And not that you rely on the weird stuff, but it's like, man, even if we're not good at turnovers, every once in a while somebody's helmet will hit the ball and it'll pop out. We just haven't seen
it. Hadn't been us.
Man, it hadn't been us. Hampton, what were you going to bring up?
We've been too much on the receiving end of that.
Yeah.
Hampton, go ahead.
Look, I agree with many of the points you say.
Hampton's about to explode as you're listening to this.
No,
just listeners
I'm
out
not.
there, Hampton's about to explode. The smoke is coming out of his ears.
I'm not. And I told y'all at the beginning, I agree with the points on Bill O'Brien. He's not creative enough. He doesn't commit to the run. That stat that I gave you is the biggest indictment that I can give you on why he should no longer be the OC at Alabama after this year. That's the biggest indictment I can give you, 110%. But I want to ask you both this. And this is true, and this is just facts. What was the difference between Jalen Milroe's game versus Texas A&M and Bryce versus LSU on Saturday? Because I was at that Texas A&M game. That offense could have scored 40 if plays were executed. If plays were executed, the quarterback did his job. The same thing applies this past weekend. The same thing applies. And I love Bryce. That is what I'm telling y'all. I love Bryce. He's a sensational player. But it is fine to talk about his critique, his weaknesses. And that is a weakness for him. Especially if you put pressure right in front of his face, he's not going to find a guy over the middle. And he's going to bail on the pocket. I mean, his pocket presence, guys, on Saturday was downright awful. There were many times just a simple shift in the pocket would have been fine, and he could have found an open window, gotten the ball to a guy. I remember, you talk about Burton never getting open. Burton was open for a slant for a huge butt gain, but Bill O'Brien doesn't run slants. Well, he did on this play. He's wide open.
The one time out of the past 10 years, he ran the slant.
And Bryce Young threw it behind him where he couldn't even catch the ball. And so what I'm saying is, I love the guy, but we gotta be factual. It's not all on him, but a good component of this loss. Not the Tennessee loss. The Tennessee loss was squarely on the defense, in my opinion. It was not on Bryce Young. This one was. And like I said, he struggled against Mississippi State and he struggled against Texas with the same issues. Okay. And I know his shoulder, I'm going to give him a little bit of grace because I don't think that shoulder was 100% because, the whole thing of, Alabama doesn't take shots vertically. Do y'all remember when we played Arkansas that first quarter? Bama took shots vertically, and I think it was because that shoulder was healthy and those receivers magically got open that game, and Bryce was hitting them, and he just wasn't hitting them on Saturday night. I think we've covered that, and if y'all have any retort to that, that is fine. But I think we're going to just probably agree or disagree slightly on that, which is fine. That's the beauty. I like having this back and forth and being able to defend our positions. But I'm going to shift quickly to the defense.
Can I mention just one aspect?
Yes, you can. Go ahead.
I mean, I don't disagree that if we did score touchdowns, we would win more. That if Bryce were to execute, then we were to win. I mean, I can't argue with that. I think that
Booger McFarland.
I think that where maybe we disagree a little bit is it seems like your argument's a little bit more broad. We do got to spread it out. Everybody owns this. Hey, Bryce, want to give some grace? And I just want to get pinpoint down to it. I don't feel like we've got Vanderbilt over there blocking on the left side of the line. I mean, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing, man?
The offensive line wasn't that bad on Saturday night, especially in pass protection. Now, run blocking is a different story. Pass protection, they were fine.
I just don't know, man. I mean, I don't see any talent besides Gibbs and Bryce that's on offensive side.
Oh,
no one even spikes my interest. Is like maybe they're going in the second round of the NFL.
J.C. Latham will
when he gets there, possibly.
He's been a top 5 right tackle in the SEC, arguably college football this year.
I don't see anybody that's getting me excited.
To me, and I'll say this, Bond and Prentice, I think they haven't been outstanding, but they've shown and flashed enough to me where I'm like, they're going to be players down the line. I think what people don't remember is that other than Jalen Waddle, who I get that we developed him, but Chase, he showed up to Bama a stud. Dude was different, okay? Yeah. That dude was different. But Waddle or Smitty, Judy, and Ruggs did not show – their freshman year at Bama wasn't what they were their sophomore year.
And that's the thing is that's who we have out there that Bryce is throwing to right now is the freshman undeveloped guy. I think that's where I'm like, man, we're asking a 19-year-old to help this future first-round draft pick in the NFL. That's who we have playing quarterback, and we have those freshmen that are unpolished. Where are our guys? Like, what happened to those classes leading up to this? And I'm not saying Anoma and those names that have gone on, but where are those juniors and seniors that have just been slowly waiting, believing in the process, and now they're ready to shine and they've developed? I agree with you though on the Waddle thing. He showed up. He's locked and loaded, but we just haven't developed.
But again, I think part of that is true. Sure, we haven't developed them like we thought or whatever. We can sparse words on that all day. I'm with you. But also, we got like the class of Smitty, Judy, Waddle, and Ruggs. That is a generational thing. That is not something that is going to happen every year. That's just not. And last year, J-Mo and Metch were about as good of a duo as you could hope for in college football. They were elite. And even then, at times, Bryce struggled with the same things that we saw on Saturday night. I'm not saying that the receivers can't be better. I'm not saying that I want them to be more along in their development. I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying I don't think them being more wide open is going to fix all the issues that Bryce has when pressure's up the middle and he's fleeing the pocket early and not finding guys. That's all I'm saying. I don't disagree with there needs to be better development, and that's kind of like an overarching point that I want to like put a pin on and that we can kind of discuss before we kind of move on and get out of here. recruiting misses are a thing in this too. Because you go look at that 2019 class that we had, I believe it was rated top 3. It was really good on paper. Many guys have not panned out in that class. They didn't pan out or they transferred. Jordan Battle was, a guy who he's now, and these are guys that are supposed to be seniors now. So Evan Neal, stud. We can all agree with that. Hit on him. Jordan Battle, hit on him. A lot of the other guys, Trey Sanders, tragic car accident that messed his hip up, and he's never been the same player. So you go down the list of that class, there are a lot of guys who aren't contributing or not there anymore. That is a problem. That is a talent problem, okay? And you see on Saturday, and I'm guilty of this as well as an Alabama fan, we inflate or overvalue the players that we have. And we're like, oh, yeah, this dude's a stud, this dude's a stud. When in reality, we got some guys out there that are not up to the Alabama standard that we have had in the past. I'm looking at you, Henry To'oTo'o, who looks like Michael Scott playing basketball when you go on a blitz, doing all this and doing nothing when you get to the quarterback. I'm looking at you, Jalen Moody, who said you were a bad you-know-what, and then you go into the game and you get run over by a walk-on running back.
Jeez, bro, you sure did too.
I'm looking at DeMarco Hellams, who is not good in coverage, and then he comes down and he got shook on that touchdown, which is a hard tackle to make. I get it. And I'm also looking at Malachi Moore, who was a 4-star guy in 2020, played really good as a freshman. He's regressed ever since. I'm looking at Will Anderson. I'm looking at Dallas Turner. You're supposed to be God's gift to pass rushers. You're supposed to be Derek Thomas Jr. Will Anderson's not been great this year, folks. He's been really good, but he's not been near on the level that he was last year. And people can say, oh, well, Pete Golden's dropping him in coverage too much. No, he is dropping him in coverage, but when he is getting pass rush reps, he's not winning at the level that he was last year. That is just facts. He's not tackling as well. He's not been as effective as a run defender. And when you pile that up, not only I think there's a coaching issue because I don't think Pete Golding instills the alpha, the intensity, the edge you need to play defense because he's just a golly good G guy. And the defense needs somebody to get in their butt and get some intensity and honestly be a better teacher, especially at the inside linebacker position. But when your best players have regressed, the guys that you were counting on, that's a big butt issue. And I think that's why you've seen a regression in the defense because last year, by the end of the year, the defense was playing good ball. Now, people may not want to say that, but they were playing really good ball. And this year, they've gone backwards, and they returned almost everybody. Defensive line hadn't developed very well. I know part of that's on Freddie Roach probably, but personnel plays just as big of a part to me as coaching because there's some guys out there that simply aren't to the talent level that we've had in the past. What do y'all make of that? Sorry, I got very animated there.
Yeah, you were very animated. I think that part of Will Anderson's progression.
Hey, we need him maybe slap around some of our players.
Episode of Skip and Shannon. Anyway, so the interior pressure on the defensive line has not been there this year. When you look in the past, you have a guy like Anthony Jennings who gets drafted in the 3rd round, who's a good player, but not an elite edge rusher like Will Anderson could be. But Anthony Jennings was elevated because of interior pressure that Alabama was able to get. They were just maybe they're unknown, but they were eating up blocks, and that left one-on-ones.
They pushed the pocket. They pushed the pocket.
And this year, all the blocking against the opponent for the opponents has been don't let them outside. Just step up in the pocket and you're good. Dallas Turner on the edge, Will Anderson on the edge. There's no interior pressure at all that is helping them collapse the pocket.
Agreed. Chase, you got anything else to add? I'll give you credit. I'll give you and Andy Nee a little credit. When y'all were talking about there's some players out there that aren't up to the Alabama standard, I tried to defend some of them. And I don't want to be this show where we just bash players because they're working their butt off. They're trying. I get all that. But as part of
what if they deserve it?
But part of being and having a podcast, you got to be honest.
Yeah.
And some of these guys just aren't playing good ball. and they hadn't played good ball all year. So I want to get. I mean, you and Andy were. I think y'all were a little off the reservoir.
Hey, we're not talking
a little
about
bit.
players here, are we?
I think
You
you were a
wanna
little bit off the
criticize
beaten path,
people
but
grouping.
you might have been on to something.
Yeah, and I think that, man, I mean, I think it's because some of us being playful and trying to make a mountain out of a molehill at times, but it's usually rooted in a little bit of truth of, man, if things have taken one step backwards, and I think that we were saying, hey, man, again, the ship is sinking. I don't think anybody believes the ship is sinking. Alabama's not going to all of a sudden go to being a 2-8 type team. But I think that this week really just scared a lot of us in the sense of just like, man, we used to be that team people were scared to play. And
No one's scared anymore.
No one's really scared of anybody. The people that are out there, like, again, we know Will Anderson. We know he's a freak. But they figured out his formula. They know how to remove him from a football game. And, I think here's the last thing that I'll say. I was talking to a guy who's A&M fan. He texted me during the game and just said, man, I mean, these guys are this is old SEC right here. This is what SEC football, just again, some of those hits, you were like, man, it feels like that's always a targeting newadays. And anyways, they were popping. And I don't know, man. Alabama used to be that team, that program that when you turn them on, you could watch the NFL on Sunday and see how fast they played, and then watch Alabama on Saturday. And I'm not saying we were at the NFL level everywhere, but it was the closest in college football that it got to playing at an NFL type speed, power, physicality, discipline. And I can tell you right now, the disciplines, obviously, very easy.
Lacking.
Very easy to say, hey, look at how many penalties we've had. We are not as disciplined as we used to be, but just not as fast, not as powerful. It just comes back to we got a bunch of snake oil salesmen over there in the sports science. I'm not even going to go there. I'm just messing with y'all.
Do not get me started on that.
You didn't think I was going there, did you?
Oh, I did. But I think you were going there.
But nah, I think that Saban's just going to have to really evaluate. I mean, how long does he want to be there? How many more years does he like if he's going to rebuild this, who does he want to do it with? Because I think this is the last, hey, I've got these coordinators might see me to the end type thing. So anyways, I think we've had good discussion. I think that at the end of the day, if you're not in that locker room, it's going to be really hard to tell precisely what it is. We can only guess, but I think we can get close.
And the last thing I'll say, a lot of this does fall at the feet of Nick Saban, who's the head coach of the program. He's responsible for the coordinator hires. I believe both will be gone by the end of the year. I think he knows that there needs to be an infusion of new ideas, some tweaks and scheme. I think he knows that. I think he knows there needs to be an infusion of talent that's coming with this class. Lord, may we hold on to Caleb Downs. That'd be my Christmas gift, and I will take nothing else and be happy with it. And I think he knows that. And I think getting back to the standard, he holds himself to that standard of being excellent in everything he does and the process and all that. Maybe you need to up how you hold everybody else to it, because the lack of discipline, the lack of intensity. I mean, I don't think guys are playing like loafing out there. I mean, I think the defense played very hard. I think they got wore out at the end because the offense kept going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out. But because, I mean, even Will Anderson early was making plays, but when the game mattered, when the game was in the balance, you didn't make a play. I mean, first play of overtime, you let him go right down the field for one play. Then on the 2-point conversion, I knew what was coming for the snap.
Yep.
And Jordan Battle still didn't get over. He's a 4-year starter. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how he retools everything, get some new life, get some new blood in there. I don't think the dynasty's over. I don't think that you're recruiting too well for that to happen, but major changes have to occur for Alabama to get on top of the college football mountain again. And it's going to be fascinating to watch, and really enjoyed talking about it with you two gentlemen here tonight. Got fired up, had some testiness back and forth, but all in good fun. Graham, you have anything else? Did you have anything else you were about to say?
Yeah, this is the last thing I'll say is that we talk about Alabama, sort of disappointing this year, not being up to the standard. But I mean, it comes down to truly 2-3 plays, and this team's undefeated. So, yes, we're disappointed, but not all hope is lost for the future of Alabama football.
Perfectly said, buddy. Perfectly said. And it's going to be interesting to see how they respond in Oxford on Saturday. And we'll talk about that briefly in our next episode up on the Pigskin Cafe previewing Week 12. Guys, I cannot believe we're almost finished with the college football season. Makes me sad. But like you said, Chase, at least we have college basketball heating up, and we can kind of get invested in that. But thank you so much for joining us today. If this is your first time listening to the Pigskin Cafe, be sure to subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment on what you think the biggest issue in the Alabama program is right now, and hit that notification bell. Be sure to follow us on social media and wherever you get your podcasts so you can stay up to date with all the Pigskin Cafe content that we put out each and every week. We will be back next time to preview college football Week 12. But until next time, chew on